Hello guys, welcome to OA.Studios once again. And today's video will be continuing our modeling series, and this is going to be our second session. And then today we are going straight into um, Revit for modeling. So if you have any example files, you can join along, or you can just learn the tips and the tricks and the methods or the approach you can use for creating your Revit models. Right here, I have put every file I need into a folder on my desktop, and I'll be extracting those documents as we open the Revit file. So firstly, I would want to show the last one that was done back in um, 2021. This is the sample model. So let me try and open it up on Revit. So it's a 2022 file, and it's upgrading it to 2026. So this is what the model looks like. So all these are chaos assets. The last render was done with V-Ray for Revit. Um, so all these assets were from V-Ray's inbuilt library, Chaos Cosmos. The cars, the trees, the realistic trees, and the grasses and all. These other trees here are RPG, RPC Revit models. Okay, so this was what it looked like. Let me get a clearer 3D view. Yeah, and I'll change this. So this is in dark mode. The canvas is on dark mode. So I can change that in the view and canvas theme. I'll change it back to white. Or I simply just do CA, a shortcut CA, and it switches between both modes. Alright. So I'll turn off the crop line. Yeah, so this is what the model was like. Let me hide all this so that the view is lighter. I'm going to temporarily hide by category. So every plant category will get hidden. And I'll do the same for these cars. Hide by category. Yeah. So this was the model. Increase this, and we can see what the model looked like. With the gates, the fences, the curbs, the grass. Uh, our exhaust is shooting out. Yeah, we can modify that in this new one. And so we see the ramp leading up to the platform where we have the private garden, and then it leads to the study, and this leads to the entrance of the house. So with this, we can see what we are aiming for, and we would even do better because the techniques I used here, I found better ways to achieve some things. So we are going to learn some of the more useful tools or techniques for achieving this model. All right. So with that, we would move straight uh, to modeling or to setting up the Revit file for the next setting up the Revit file for our model. Okay, so for this series, we'll be using Revit 2026. As of time of this record, the latest version is 2027. So whichever one you're using, I think you'll be able to follow along in this series. Check in the description also, you would see a link to the files. I'm going to use the exercise files. So if you want to tag along with the same design, you can download them from the Google Drive link and join in this process. All right. So when you launch Revit, typically this is what you see at the home screen, and we'll be creating a new file for our model. And how you do that, you simply come to new under the models category, come to new, and then you have the opportunity to pick a particular template which you want to use for this session, or this model rather, or the project rather. So one thing you must ensure is make sure this is checked on project, not project templates. If it's on project template, it means you want to create a template you can use for multiple projects. Maybe you could have a residential template or commercial template, depending on what you want to do as a person or as an organization. So ensure it's always checked on project, and the difference within both of them is the project file comes as the extension is RVT, while project template file the extension is RTE, right? So there are like three types of files that Revit could have: RVT, which is project, RTE, which is template, and RFE, which is family, RFA rather, which is a Revit family. So if you look at this top, you will see these two, they are RFA files, while these ones are RVT files, which are project files. While this is a family, and RTE is a template. Okay, so don't make that mistake. Then, so these are the default templates we have: construction, architectural. I'll just go with architectural. Sometimes if I think if you're working on earlier versions of 2026, the templates might be different, right? Or rather, to make it easier for everyone, I would just go to browse. Usually there's a default template we have, which is this default metric, and I'll pick that particular one. So it usually gets, these are like pre-installed templates with Revit. So usually once you click browse, it should take you to a place or a folder where you have all these templates listed down. So I'll just pick default metric and I'll open. Let's work with that. Okay, and then once I've done that, I'll click OK and allow my Revit to launch and open that up. Depending on your system capacity, it might take a while, but they shouldn't take so long. Okay, so I have a black canvas, and I would, like I told you guys earlier, CA, you can change it to white, or if you come to view canvas theme, you can flip between. All right, so I'll move this project browser to the right. I like having mine on both sides, but if you need more canvas space, you can also dock this beneath. So how you do it is, just once you come to the top of the bar, you just click and drag and you can pick it out. All right, and you can place it literally anywhere by the side of this, or before this, or I think you can also place underneath. Yeah, so if you bring it to the bottom, see it's giving you the sign that it's going to dock it under, and that's this. All right, and you can adjust this as you like, but personally I prefer mine to the right. Okay, So with that done, we can start our model. Now the first thing we are going to do, which I usually do when I want to start any fresh project, is to set up the levels, because these are going to be the boundaries with which you are going to work with vertically, right? So set up your levels should always be the first approach, if you ask me, when you want to start any fresh project or model. So to do that, we would come to, I usually do that on the south. I'll go to the south elevation, right, which is default. And we have level 1, level 2, level 1 at 0, level 2 at 4000 mm. Also, before you even check the levels through, check your units, so you determine what units you want to use for the project. Okay, so if you type UN shortcut, the units browser should come out, or I think you can find it under manage, yeah, under settings panel, manage tab, settings panel, and you see project units. The shortcut also shows the UN. Okay, so you just click that and this comes up for you. And so I'll just look through. It's in metric. The default template is metric, so almost everything will be in metric here. But for distance, I'll just choose meters. I'm more comfortable with that. Length, millimeters, and all this are good for me. So depending on what you're using, if you're working in imperial um, mode, which is feet and inches, to make it easier, you should just choose a default imperial template rather than picking a metric. But if you pick a metric and you want to change them, you can simply change it here and pick whatever units you would like to use. So once that's done, I'll click OK. Okay, so I'll set up the levels. So from the files we have, I think I have some elevation files there. Let me see what was done previously. Okay, so in the previous model we had assumed ground floor at 0, ground floor at 450, first floor at 3750, and wall plates at 3.6 and parapet at 1.2. So we'll just stick to that. Okay, so depending on the project you have, but just make sure you determine these levels as you're starting up the project. They can change, all right, as the project or the design advances, but it's good to always have something in mind initially. All right, so we'll just work with this. Assume ground level, ground floor, first floor, wall plates, parapet level, and then we'll use these dimensions to go with. Okay, so with that being said, so we should have, so let's rename this and call it assumed. So I'll just use ASS, or rather I'll just use NGL, natural ground level, right, to make it easier. Now when you want to change a level that has relationship with a view here, what you can do when you change the name, rather, Revit usually asks you, would you like to change the name of the corresponding views? And usually you want to check yes. If you check no, the level will have a different name, the view will have a different name, and it makes it sometimes difficult to track. So the best approach is to always click yes. I always click yes, and I go with that, and we see that that level has changed to NGL over here, right? And for this one, we'll change it to GFL, and it has a corresponding view, and I'll click yes. Okay, so from our picture the difference was 450, and we'll just go with that. So but for now, let's change this to 450. Oh, sorry, 450, and that's it. And so I'll just click this Z icon here and split this into two. Now this is our ground floor, so let's create new levels. To create a new level, you can either come to architecture tab and datum panel, and you see levels here. Okay, the shortcut is LL, and you can just type, I prefer using shortcuts, LL, and I have my level. I'll just click and drop, and it's there. Alright, now if you notice, this level has no, the color is black rather instead of blue, and I will explain that. What the black means is this level doesn't have a corresponding view attached to it. So if you look at your floor plans, you still have site, NGL, and GFL. There is no level 3 there. So what that's telling you is this level doesn't have a corresponding view. But if you want to have a corresponding view from the onset, if you click LL, you would see this under the modify, create plan view. And if you check that on, you can also check what kind of plan views do you want to create. Ceiling, floor plan, structural. I would say yes for all and click OK. And if I draw again, we see that we now have a plan view for level 4, a ceiling plan for level 4, and a structural plan for level 4. Alright, and it's now blue in color. Okay, so always take note of that. Another thing is you can also copy. If you select this and come to modify, copy, or CO for shortcuts, if you copy it and drop it, the usually by default it doesn't attach a plan view to it. Alright, so you have to, if you want a plan view, you have to create a plan view for that level on your own. Okay, so and I'll show you how to do that. So we have level 3, so let's rename this and just call this 1FL, first floor level. I will just call this WPL, wall plate level. Corresponding views, yes. Okay, and then we'll call this PPL, parapet, PWL rather, parapet wall level. Okay, now to determine the actual floor to floor heights that we want, my approach is to use the dimension tool to be able to determine that. So if I select dimension aligned and I pick each level, okay, so I see the difference or the heights between each of them. Now notice this is showing 2350, but this 2350 is from the zero. This is 4650 from zero level. This is 8050 from zero level. So always take note of that. The figures on this level are reading from datum, which is the zero level, while um, the intermediate heights of each levels would also be different. So if we confirm this from here to here, we see that it's 2350. Alright, from here to here, 4650, here to here, 8050. Okay, now so to adjust these heights, what I would do, I can select this. So once you put dimensions to, most times, model elements, even detail elements, and you select them, dimensions become active and you can change the heights as you want. Okay, if they don't become active, you can also select this activate controls, right, and it should pop up. Okay, but sometimes by default it's always active. So I would select this and make this 3750 as we had in our picture, and for this one I'll make it 3.6, and then here I think we had 1.2. Yes, and I'll do 1.2 here. Okay, and we have that. Now back when I did the earlier design, I don't think I did anything on floor finishes. So my new approach now, whenever I'm doing any design, I usually have levels for floor finish. Alright, so that it's easy to manage when I'm doing finishes plans or finishing schedules. Okay, so what I would do is to create another level for floor finish, but what happens is that level would not have a corresponding view because it's not necessary. The level will only be used to host furniture elements that are going to stay on the floor finish. Alright, so I don't need a separate floor plan or view for it. Okay, so to do that, I'll just create another level, or rather I'll just copy CO for copy, and I'll put this. And so by default, the screeding for the floor finish is usually 50 mm. The floor finish, some of them 10 mm, some of them 20 mm, depending on the maybe tiles or whatever type of finish you want to use. But I usually just leave it within 60, default 60 mm gap from the um, structural floor to the top of the floor finish. Okay, it can change depending on the specification, but let's work with that um, for this model. So I'll just pick 60 and have that there, and I'll copy this. I could have even copied them, so let's work smart. I'll delete this and select it too. So if I select one item, I want to select multiple, I can hold control and you see the plus sign active. Sorry, plus sign active on the cursor, and I select. Alright, and I'll click CO, and I'll just go up by 60 and drop for both of them. Alright, and I'll change this to GFL FFL, that's ground floor level floor finish. Okay, and I'll change this to 1FL FFL. Alright, so I would split this, take this up so that it's visible, split this, take this up so that it's visible. Okay, and I would lock them together, because even if the level heights change, the floor finishes won't necessarily change most times. So when I put a dimension to it, I can lock this level to this, so that wherever this level goes, this one goes with it. So when you add the dimension, you see this lock sign, you select it and it locks it up. Alright, and I'll do the same thing for this and lock it up. So if I change this, let's say I want it now to be 4.2, you see that the finished floor level moves along with it. Okay, and I'll bring it to 3750. Now another thing to note, this is 3750 because the floor slab is going to be beneath. So if you have your floor, let's say this is our floor slab, the levels, this usually comes on top, the let me see, comes on top of the slab this way. Right, so what that means is, if this top is 3750, if you remove the slab thickness usually of 150, your structural slab to soffit off the first floor slab will now be 3.6. So that's why I've done it this way, 3750. But for here, since you don't have another floor above, we leave it at 3.6. All right, so just take note of that, and I'll delete this. So with this done, so I think our levels have been set up, right? And I think we can then move to the next thing, which would be bringing in our reference files and then drawing over them, and we'll do that in the next video. Thank you.